Good morning, everybody. I appreciate you joining us this morning for our webinar. This webinar is really designed for business owners, managers, C-levels, people who are overseeing the company. This is not a user training video, so I just want to get that out there. It's called Keeping Your Employees Safe from Cyber Threats as They Work from Home. As you know, this COVID pandemic and everything that's going on in the country, we got a lot of people working from home right now and suddenly. So this is something that a lot of companies really weren't prepared for. You may have had a kind of a mixed environment where sometimes you work from home, sometimes you didn't, but we're going to get into a lot of good details today to help you really identify the important things you need to know about as a business owner or manager, office manager, practice manager, anybody who's running the company. This is for them. First of all, let's start out with who I am. My name is Mario DiMarcantonio, and I am the CEO of a company called Progressive IT Solutions. We're located here in Dallas, Texas, and we're a IT and cybersecurity company for private equity, family offices, venture capital, and any company really that needs a high-touch executive level type IT service. That's what we do. Is kind of what we specialize in. I've been in the IT industry for about 30 years now, going on 30 years of being in the trenches. So I know this stuff, I've lived it. I'm not in the trenches as much lately, more running the company, but I do still get in there and dig into the tech sometimes. But I know IT very well, and I've seen the trends, and I know all the current stuff that's going on too. I've got some professional IT certifications. A little personal history is I'm married 30 years this year in 2020. I've got 2 kids. One of them's married and out of the house, and I got one in high school right now too. So this is what we're going to cover today, just so you know up front. We're going to talk about why you as a business owner, founder, manager should care about your employees working remotely and the cybersecurity thing. I know as an owner, we don't get involved in a lot of the tech sometimes, and this may be something you just think's taken care of, or you're not even thinking about it. But we'll talk about why it's important and why you need to care as a business owner. We're also going to talk about a couple of common misconceptions or ways of thinking that you may be thinking this way now, and we're going to clear up a couple of myths. We're going to talk about briefly what the threats are at a high level. We're going to talk about how you can reduce your risk for your employees. And we're going to talk about specific steps of things you can do to protect your employees. Now, you don't have to do these things as a business owner, but you can take this checklist, and we're happy to give you a copy of the presentation here if you shoot us an email, or you can just rewatch the video. We're recording this now too. Anyway, this is a little checklist you can hand off to your IT people, your IT company, or whoever you're using for IT, and they should be able to make sure that these things are in place for your employees. Hopefully a lot of them are now, but anyway, and then at the end we'll answer a couple of questions. And this is a good time to mention that in Zoom, down at the bottom of your controls, you have the ability to post a question to the Q&A. So as we're going along, go ahead and type your questions in, and then at the end I'll review those questions and we'll cover them at the end. I won't do that during the presentation. What we're not going to talk about today, we're not going to get into the weeds, because as owners, that's not what we're all about. We're high level. We want to run the companies. We don't really, we care about the details and what happens to the company, and that's really what's important to us, but we're not getting into all the tech. This is not a tech training. We're not going to talk about every single risk or every single threat and every single solution that's out there. This is just a high level summary, covers a lot of the basics, but if you need more depth, I encourage you to talk to your IT department. If you don't have a good IT person or company, we can certainly help you too. So as a business owner, this is a good question. Why should you care? Like, why is this even important? You're running the company. Why should you care? Why is it important if your employees are safe at home? They're working, right? Well, let me tell you why. We're going to count the ways. This is very important because the things that we care about as business owners matter, and what can happen to your employees can affect these things on the list. You can lose revenue. People can sue you. The if you had a bad enough event, your data may be out there. You may get exposed in a data breach, have to report it publicly, and then your brand or your reputation is affected. If your clients are affected by a data breach or ransomware, or your inability to deliver products or services, you can lose your clients, which affects your revenue. I mean, it's just a really bad situation. And more, number five, uh, Europe has implemented some guidance called GDPR, and it's related to data privacy. And we're going to see more and more regulations like that we have to live by as businesses. And they're coming to the United States, and they come with fines. HIPAA has been around. If you're in medical, you're familiar with HIPAA fines, and they're getting more and more severe and more common. But there's other financial industry, and really any business is going to be affected eventually by these compliance laws. Lost employee productivity. I mean, these all come down to lost money and affecting your business and its ability to operate. That's why this is important. And yes, you can technically go out of business if it's bad enough. If something happens, your employee clicks the wrong thing, you're set up incorrectly, you get ransomware, and it gets bad enough, you could possibly go out of business if you're down long enough. So these are important things, and these should be keeping you up at night, or at least be thinking about them. After all, your business is your baby, right? I mean, you've spent a lot of time, especially if you're a founder or an owner, you've spent a lot of time building this business, and you don't want it to be affected by something silly and oversight, missing something that's really simple. And guess what? Your employees are your biggest risk, unfortunately, because a lot of times the IT guys do a pretty good job. We come in all shapes and sizes and flavors and skill sets. But if your IT guy or your IT company is worth their weight, I guess, they should be doing a lot of this stuff. So a lot of the IT stuff is generally good, but your people, those are the biggest risk right now. And that's why we're talking about employees and keeping them safe, because we don't want them to be an easy in for a hacker or malware or ransomware kicking off while they're at home. Let's talk about a couple common misconceptions. As business owners, we're focused on the important things, right? Running the company, the numbers, getting the products and services out. We delegate a lot to people and just trust that they're doing what they're supposed to, right? Well, let's talk about the first myth or misconception, that your IT guy has you covered. Maybe, but are you really sure that they have you covered? So you'll want to check with your IT guy or your IT department and have them show you a list, a summary of what they're doing. So you want to make sure that they've got all your bases covered. And you can use this little checklist at the end to just hand that to them, and they'll let you know if they've got all those things covered. They should be also sending you reports on a regular basis if you like those reports. Some people like them, some people don't, but they should be able to produce reports on what they've been working on, what they're protecting, how many viruses they've stopped, and things like that to you pretty easily with the tools we have today. Let's talk about our second misconception. I'm protected at the office, so I'm protected at home, right? So you think, and this may or may not be true. Here's the answer, maybe again, but are you sure? So it could be, and it really just depends on what your IT guys have in place, what you've spent money on IT, and the kind of protections you have. There are so many protections available, and some of them are critical. If you have those in place, you might be safe, but you really need to have a discussion with your IT guy to make sure. And again, you can use this checklist, because a lot of companies, they weren't really, a lot of us are stuck in this kind of hybrid mode with the cloud, moving remotely and things like that. There's a lot more mobile devices, laptops and things like that floating around, but we still depend on the office. And a lot of times we're working in the office, and depending on your industry, you may spend all day in the office every day. And we're not really prepared for this sudden remote work situation that we're in right now. So you may or may not be covered. It depends. And for example, we got a lot of people going remote and they're using home computers, and we'll talk about why that's not a good thing if you're not set up properly. So let's talk about some of the threats and the risks that your employees face. But first, we're going to talk about a high level, what all the risks are, what a lot of the common risks are. So these are some risks to your business, your specific business, and these can also affect your employees remotely. And I have to tell you, we do a lot of disaster planning, thinking about how to protect companies, and from power outages, tornadoes. That's why I have natural disasters up there. And power outages, natural disasters, those are the things that we see a lot. In Dallas, we see tornadoes, we see high winds, we see power outages. Occasionally there's internet outages. But one thing I did not have on the radar until this year is a global pandemic. I had never really thought that that would be a situation, because it's very unique. We have power, we have water, garbage pickup, the offices are running, the internet's up. So it's kind of a weird kind of emergency. So I'm going to keep that on my list from now on. Global pandemics are something that we definitely need to think about, and they definitely affect us. Something that we're all susceptible to, cyber attacks. This has been in the news a lot. Ransomware, malware, things like that definitely affect companies. Data loss, data breaches, phishing, employees. This is an important one too. Employees, as I mentioned, are one of the biggest risks. Excuse me while I get a drink. They can really, you can be set up like Fort Knox, and your employee clicks something that's not appropriate, or it may be a phishing email or something like that, and then it's all over. Zoom bombing is something you may have heard of too. It's something new related to people hacking your Zoom meeting. So I have a whole video on this too, but basically if you don't have your security set up correctly in Zoom, people can come in uninvited into your meeting and do all kinds of things. They can share things on the screen, they can chat, they can talk in your meeting if you don't have things set up correctly. So these are some of the risks to your business. So let's talk about how to protect your employees and ultimately protect your company. So these are some specific threats to your remote employees. So this is not the business necessarily, but this is the kinds of things that you need to be thinking about when you have employees remotely or working remotely. And this could be at home, or it could be anywhere really. It's all kind of the same. The first threat that they need to think about, or that you need to think about, is the employee themselves, because employees, they're just people. I mean, we see all kinds of emails all day long. We get calls. They accidentally click things, and sometimes those things are blocked if you got the right tools. But you really got to train your people so that they aren't doing things. I mean, they accidentally delete data, for example. This isn't necessarily anything malicious. It may just be accidental. And if you don't have the right tools in place, especially remotely, we may be protecting all the data in the office, but if that data is local to the computer and now they're working locally, are you sure you're backing that data up? A lot of users, for example, save data to or files to their desktop, and that's not always backed up. So working remotely, they may or may not have access to the server at the office, depending on how they're set up. So they may be saving everything to the desktop. And what if their computer crashes? And what if that file was something critical for a meeting that you needed? You just have to think about all these areas. They're still susceptible to viruses, malware, phishing attacks. And if you don't know what a phishing attack is, it's usually delivered through email or a web page, and it looks legitimate. It looks like a legitimate email coming in, and then they'll click it. And then the next thing you know, they want to gather some information from you. And that's where the phishing part comes in. So they're trying to phish information from you, your username, your password, credit card information, or anything personal they can get. And then they take that and they either try to exploit you by logging into your bank account or logging into your network, or they sell it on the dark web. And it's just a bad situation, and it's very common. It's probably one of the biggest things that's going on right now with employees clicking the wrong thing and then then they give up their credentials, and then they may or may not take action after that. If you don't, and that password and login information is used in other places, it can be a really bad situation. You got hackers logging into your systems, and then they have access to whatever you have access to. Data loss can also be malicious too, but we're talking about here, most employees are pretty honest, and you don't have to worry about that. The biggest thing we see when we do data restores is accidental deletions. We accidentally moved a file or don't know where it is or deleted it on accident, including emails, all that stuff. This is something unique right now that's going on too, is their home computers and their home network. Most people are not ready to be secure at home. And you'll hear news reports about this too, where hackers are hacking into, I think there was something in the news about the Russians hacking the home routers because they had known security weaknesses. And this is a common problem because at home, your cable guy sets up your Wi-Fi, or you put in your own Wi-Fi router or system, and you don't really know what you're doing. So you use the defaults, you don't set a good password, and sometimes you don't even require a password to attach to the network, or you don't set a or change the password for the admin account to manage that device. There's just all kinds of things going on, and certainly you never go in and update it. Updates to your local home router and setting security on your home router and Wi-Fi is really important, because Wi-Fi networks are basically an easy way in for attackers. You don't even have to be, you just have to be within the range of the signal. So if you've got an open Wi-Fi or a Wi-Fi that password that's so simple to guess, like your home address, or something simple like your phone number or whatever, somebody can sit outside your house, get your signal, get onto your home network, and then have access to your computer. And if that computer is a home computer, that's bad. I mean, you got all your pictures and everything personal there. But it's even worse if it's a work computer that's not set up properly. If it doesn't have its firewall on, if it doesn't have software loaded to detect things like attacks, if the connection back to the office is not secure, if that computer gets hacked, your business could get hacked right from the home of your employee. So you got to think about stuff like that. They're certainly susceptible to cyber attacks and breaches, because they can be anywhere and get attacked, hacked, click on the wrong thing, get malware loaded, viruses, all that stuff. So these are the kinds of things that you need to think about specifically related to your employees working remotely. So let's talk about briefly what they need. These are the things that they're going to need at home. So this is what you can protect your employees with. They need, first of all, the right security software. And when I say security software, I'm not just talking what we used to call antivirus software. Today it's called endpoint protection. I'm not just talking about that. There's some other software that you'll want to have, especially on a business computer, that detects things outside of common viruses like Trojans, malware, backdoors, and things like that. There's some other tools that you'll want to check with your security, your IT provider, and make sure they're loading. But at a minimum, you need endpoint protection or antivirus protection. And we'll talk about an example coming up. You want to make sure that they're getting their security updates. And when I say security updates, that's talking about the home router too. All the computers in the house, even if they're personal computers, should be getting security updates, but especially that business machine. And not just the Windows security updates, but if you have a computer like a Dell or an HP, those need security updates as well, because there's some common weaknesses there, and those can be exploited. And all a hacker needs is one door in, and they can go to town if you're not plugging up the security holes with updates. If anybody's running Windows 7 still, or Server 2008 or earlier, those are very susceptible to attacks because they stopped getting security updates. And if you don't have security updates ongoing, then hackers discover known weaknesses, and then they exploit them. So they'll scan your computer, and if they see an old computer on the network and you don't have and it's not going to have all the updates if it's old, they'll take advantage of that, and that's all they need is a little wedge in. You need to make sure that their working environment is protected as well. We talked about that a little bit, their home network. protecting that. This is something that people should be doing, whether it's personal or home. Protect your accounts with strong passwords. Password managers are definitely recommended, but definitely use strong passwords, complex passwords. I'm not going to go into all that today. And then MFA is kind of a big word. It just stands for multi-factor authentication. And that's just simply like when you go to your bank website, a lot of us, or your credit card site, a lot of times you'll log in with your username, your password, and then they text you a code. That's multi-factor. It requires multiple pieces of information for you to log in. And we want to turn that on everywhere we can as a business and personal too. And password managers are really great ways to keep track of all your complex passwords. And then you don't have to think about them. They're saved, they're stored, they're secure. And then enabling multi-factor is just like that extra insurance. So even if your password and username got leaked, they couldn't really get in without your device. I mean, it's very hard to hack. There's some ways they can do it, but it's very, very difficult. This next item, cybersecurity awareness, is something that you definitely want to keep in mind, because if you're not already doing it, this is an ongoing thing you have to do to keep cyber security awareness in their minds, in your employees' minds all the time. So that you want your employees to kind of be on edge. You want them to be thinking, you know, is this real? Is this okay to click? You know, and if it's not, forward it to the IT guy to check it out. You want them to have that kind of thinking and not just be clicking on whatever comes in that looks legitimate, because there's a lot of stuff out there going around and it changes all the time. And unfortunately, even right now with the COVID-19 thing, hackers take advantage of every single world event, a disaster that happens. They'll send emails out about COVID-19 donations and helping people, and they want you to donate, or it'll look like a COVID-19 map of the virus spread and this and that, but it's really just malware, and it's meant to go in and get on your computer and do bad things. So it's always changing, and you got to keep your employees trained all the time and on thinking about this top of mind. Back at the office, you need to make sure, this is a big topic, that's why I put that there. We're not going to go into this, but you should have a secure IT infrastructure back at the office. Hopefully your IT guys know what they're doing and have done this for you, but we're talking about making sure your company can recover from disasters and handle disruptions and restore servers and things like that, and that it's got a fast internet and all that stuff. It's a big topic. If you want to discuss, we can, but that's a conversation you should have with your IT people. So here's a 8-step action plan that you can take. You can show this to your IT person, IT company, and say, hey, do we have all these things? And these are the 8 things that you should at a minimum be doing. Number 1, endpoint protection. That's just some software that runs on your computer. It protects you from the basic malware and viruses. We use WebRoot for some of that. Windows has a built-in piece of software called Defender that does this, and it's actually pretty good. It didn't used to be it wasn't something I would recommend in the past, but it's actually okay now. So at a minimum, you have that if you're on Windows 10 and above. Windows Defender, it's on some of the older versions too, but Windows 10 has it. It's built in, it's turned on. Make sure that and your firewall is on your computers at least. But I would recommend a third-party solution because they're generally better at blocking viruses. Windows Defender is coming along though. I think it's getting better over time. Make sure you're doing your Windows and vendor updates like we had mentioned. So Windows security, the critical and the important updates. If you have a Dell computer, make sure you're doing your Dell updates, and your HP, do your HP updates, plugging up those holes. Home router updates, change your default password, make sure it's got the latest software. Make sure your home Wi-Fi password is secure and not something simple, and that you're using an authentication method on your home Wi-Fi that's secure. WPA is one version of that's pretty good. And this is something too, depending on how you're set up, there's a couple of different ways to access your computer and work remotely or access your office. One of the methods that people use is VPN. And this is why home computers are so important, because technically if you have if you have your office set up with VPN, users can go home and use their home computers to connect to the network. A huge security risk if you're not ready for it, because essentially what you're doing is you're basically saying that home computer is just like a work computer on the network, on your work network. And it's attaching, instead of a cable, it's attaching through the internet. And that's that. If your home computer is insecure, then that can be a way that attackers can get in. They'll get on that insecure computer, see that you have a connection back to the office, and then it's all over. They can get to whatever the user can get to. So it's even something as simple as like a shared area on the server. Um, People can get into that and they can encrypt it with ransomware. And next thing you know, if you got a big shared drive and that user, even though they didn't have a lot of access, if they've got access to the main shared drive that everybody uses with important stuff on it, that can get encrypted. And then next thing you know, you're looking at an outage and disruption and people can't work. And then you got to call your IT guys and the insurance company or pay the ransom. And that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. So it's just a mess. You want to make sure that your home computers have a secure way of connecting. And the right way to do this, there's a lot of wrong ways to do VPN, and that's why I put secure on there. You can VPN in an old way. There's an old method of doing it. It's not secure anymore. A lot of people are doing it still. You want to make sure you're using secure VPN with SSL and multi-factor authentication. So you should, when you make your VPN connection, your users should not only have to do their username and password, but they should also have to be challenged with a code, open up an app or get a text and put that code in also. Because if your user's password got hacked or got exposed because they were phished, and then they accessed hacker got into the insecure computer at home, then they know your credentials. They know the user's credentials for work now. So that could be the email and their drives and everything at work. You just got to make sure that's secure. There's other methods for accessing your computers at work. We're not going to get into all the details, but that is, if you're using a home computer and using VPN, just ask your IT guy, make sure it's secure. Password management is something that everybody needs to be doing. Use a password manager. LastPass is a good one. It's free. The basic version is free. There's also a corporate version that you can use if you want to do some shared password management and reporting and things like that. And you can use them both together. So that the personal version for your personal passwords and then the corporate one for your corporate passwords, they all meld together. So it's a really good product. Make sure you're using multi-factor authentication everywhere you can, especially the critical accounts like your network, your VPN, all your banking, all of the credit card, anything financial, anything with sensitive information that's related to the business. And then you want to make sure you're using an automated type user cyber awareness training system. Like KnowBe4 is a good product. We use that internally and we use it for our clients. KnowBe4 they've been around. They do a great job. This allows you to test phish your users, and they're really good too. So they'll send out emails to your users that look really legitimate. They actually have a contest to try to see who can create the most real phishing email and get the most clicks. I heard that internally. They have a little contest every now and then to try to trick you, and they're really good. But you want to be doing that because you want to know who your clickers are. A lot of times it's us. I mean, sometimes the owners are doing it. Sometimes it's the receptionist. You got to have this constant phishing, every week or two, send a test email out with all the others they receive and see if they click on it. And then you go back and have conversations with those people and just say, hey, be more careful. That's a basic level training. KnowBe4 also has a bunch of videos and posters you can print, hang by the copiers and things like that. So you definitely take advantage of some form of automated and consistent ongoing cybersecurity awareness training for your users. So this is the point where we'll talk about some questions and answers. So if you had any questions or you got any questions now, go ahead and just post them in the Q&A. And looks like I got a couple here. So it says, what software do you recommend for protecting home users? This really depends. really depends on what you're talking about. We talked about WebRoot. We talked about the built-in Windows Defender software. Those at a minimum are pieces of software you definitely want to be using. It's what you would call the old antivirus. That's kind of what they're doing now, except they're better than just antivirus. So definitely have those on there at a minimum. But do talk to your, excuse me, do talk to your IT people about some other advanced software. There's something called advanced endpoint protection that you'll want to look at. And that's exactly like it sounds. It's advanced. It catches advanced threats. It's not just covering basic viruses and common viruses. They look at things in a more detailed way. So talk to your IT guy about advanced endpoint protection. And there's some other tools too. Excuse me. But we use something, for example, that catches threats that aren't really a virus and they aren't really malware, but it is a hacker on your network, and hackers do certain things sometimes. There's something called advanced persistent threats. Sometimes the hackers will come and they'll land on your network, but they don't really do anything, and it's not executing any programs. And then they'll just start kind of looking around and trying to discover things, but they're using tools that are very common. Your IT person would probably use them. And so sometimes the antivirus and the endpoint protection does not catch those. So just talk with your IT guy about that. Make sure you've got what you need, but at a minimum, get your basic endpoint protection on there. If I'm connecting to our office with VPN, is that safe? We kind of covered that. It can be safe, and it depends on how you're set up. Remember, there's a bad way to do it and there's a good way to do it. For example, a lot of companies use VPN and then they do this other thing. Well, it's just set up incorrectly. So you want to make sure that VPN is set up correctly. You can definitely use VPN, but make sure you're doing it securely. And that's a discussion for your IT guy too. What are some easy and safe ways for our company to access our files remotely? That's a good question. I like OneDrive. There's a lot of solutions out there. Most companies are using an Office 365 subscription, and all of those pretty much come with OneDrive. And OneDrive is just a basic file sync and file sharing. It's personal and business. It's just a method to do that. And it basically, you store files there, they're in the cloud, it's secure, it's encrypted between connections, and then you can edit and see those files on any device. So I would recommend something like OneDrive. There's other solutions too, Dropbox. Just make sure whatever you're using has the multi-factor authentication option enabled, because being in the cloud has its risks. It's a great convenience, but with every convenience, there's some risk. So you want to make sure that you're not just securing that with a username and a password, because somebody in another country, for example, if they know your password and your username, can just log in from anywhere and see all your cloud files if you don't have that multi-factor authentication turned on. So that's what I would use. How can I tell if my home Wi-Fi is secure? Have your IT guy look at that, because he can get in and log into the router and look at your password and see what you're using and make sure it's updated. So that's probably the best way. I wouldn't recommend having your users get into their own routers unless they're technically minded. And every router is different. So if you're using a router from an internet service provider like Charter or Frontier or something like that, Time Warner, you may call their support and have them make sure it's updated, got its latest software, and has a good password on it. If my computer's in the office and I'm connecting to it remotely, is that safe? It just depends again. So a lot of people are doing this thing where they have a computer in the office and it's like a desktop computer or even a laptop that's still there and it's on. It can be safe depending on how you're getting to it. So for example, there's insecure and secure ways to do that. I would say the best way to do that is through a secure VPN. And then you can either RDP into it. Your IT guy will know what that means. It's basically just remoting into it with a piece of software that's free. And then you're it's like you're sitting at it and controlling it. There are some other good solutions out there too to make that easier. If you have a small company and you're a business owner and you don't have an IT, You can load a product yourself on each machine. Like go to my PC is a good one. Log me in, and there's some tools like that where you load it on the software or load the software on the computer, and then you just log into their website, logmein.com, and then you see your computer, click it, and then you're sitting. It's like you're sitting at it. That can be secure, but just make sure your log me in credentials are secure and you're using multi-factor authentication there. You got to think about every possible way an attacker could log in. So there are safe ways to do that, remoting into your computer. So another question is, how do we ensure that our remote setup's actually secure? How do we ensure that our remote setup is actually secure? So this is, I'm guessing what you're asking here is your remote setup like at home. So you need to really assess where your employees are working, and each of those environments needs to be evaluated. So your IT guy, your IT company can look at everything there, and he can do remote sessions with your family, with you, and try to get into your router and look at what computers are on the network and things like that. But you really need to be assessed to answer that fully. But you want somebody who knows what they're doing to make sure that everything's updated and you don't have any. At a minimum, you need to make sure that work computer is secure, it has the right software on it, it's got its firewall turned on, it's blocking your home computers from getting to it, at a minimum. So let me see if there's any other questions here. It looks like that's all our questions. So here's our selfless plug for the day. We're offering a free complimentary remote security and network audit. If you're interested in that, just go to our website. And this is just something we're doing to help people to make sure that they're secure. progressiveitsolutions.com/IT survey. And we're doing this for new clients, and we'll do as many as we can. Just something we're trying to do to help out, make sure everybody's secure. But your IT people should be able to do this too, if they've got the right tools. We use a third-party tool that a lot of companies use that gives you just some honest feedback about how things stand, and a lot of companies do that. But if you need a hand, just let us know. So it's progressiveitsolutions.com, IT survey. And thank you for attending today. We sure appreciate you spending your time in lockdown with us. If you have any questions or you just want a copy of the slides or any other resources, there's an email, info@progressiveitsolutions.com, or you can just call our office, 214-717-4311. We're happy to help. Thanks, everybody, and have a good day.